This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
With the college football regular season all wrapped up, it is time to change things up on Wednesdays, and we're going to talk some NBA and NHL for today with Tom Vecchio. NBA In-Season Tournament Semifinals coming up in Las Vegas on Thursday. We're going to break down futures markets there, and also talk about Wednesday's NHL slate right here today. This is Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and FanDuel Research. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a managing editor of digital media for FanDuel Research, joined here by Tom Vecchio. Check him out on Twitter at Tom_Vecchio1. You, of course, know him from his Primetime Tom episodes on the same feed. One coming up later on today for a thriller between the Steelers and the Patriots. Tom, how you doing on this fine Wednesday?
I'm doing good. Yeah, excited to talk some NBA and NHL now, as opposed to waiting for that amazing Thursday night football game I'll be talking about later. So get the good stuff now, or I should say the bad stuff now, and get the good stuff later. But I'm ready to go.
I did take the over in that game. Not gonna lie. I've got it as a pretty good value. What could possibly go wrong?
Right.
It's in part because I don't view there as being a difference between Kenny Pickett and Mitchell Trubisky, which might be very stupid. But I guess we'll see. We'll find out when things happen on Thursday. Looking forward to hearing your breakdown of that game later on.
Yeah, I'm not expecting a whole lot of points. If we saw a carbon copy of the Pats game from last week, I wouldn't be too surprised at all. I wouldn't be surprised if we see 15 punts in that game. But, we will wait and see.
Oh, the Vecchio special of both teams punt on the first drive.
Oh,
it's in play, baby. Unless Bailey Zappi turns it over, that could ruin you. So just letting you know now, there are paths to that bet not hitting for the first time in a while. We're going to talk about the NBA East in-season tournament first. We're going to talk about the futures market, MVP market, and then Thursday's semifinals, and then we'll dive into Wednesday's NHL action. If you want to check out the NHL stuff first, check out the timestamps. Those are in the episode description over on FanDuel Research and on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. A reminder to make sure you're subscribed to the Covering the Spread podcast feed to get that show, the Primetime Tom show, as it goes live later on today. We'll also have Tom back with us on Friday to talk NFL props. JJ Zachariason is out for this week. Austin Cass, fresh off a 4-0 week in EPL, back with us Friday as well. And of course, Dr. Ed Fang tomorrow, talk NFL week number 14. All right here in this exact same feed. And you can find these shows on the FanDuel YouTube page and FanDuel TV Plus as well. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There is a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, totals, and more. So visit FanDuel and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. First online real money wager only. $5 pregame moneyline wager required. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777, or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700, or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland, 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Let's dig in now to the NBA in-season tournament, Tom, where last night we saw the quarterfinals, and we now have 4 teams left for the semis coming up on Thursday. We'll talk about those games specifically in just 1 second. But as of right now, the Bucks are the favorites at plus 165 to win it all. Any value for you in the in-season tournament winner market right now?
So the market is obviously changed dramatically since just the other day. I briefly mentioned when I was on the radio on Monday mornings on Sports Grid, I briefly mentioned taking the Pacers at plus 1,700 since they were the longest odds. And if they come away with the win, you're holding the ticket. Now, that was just more of like a strategy suggestion rather than an actual pick. And obviously, I would say there's no more value left in the outright winner. If we can drop down to that next menu for the in-season tournament MVP, I think this is how we actually correlate these two things. Because if you look at the Bucks, they're plus 165, right?
Yeah.
But if the Bucks win, what has to happen? It's probably a Antetokounmpo or Lillard being the driving force of them winning. But when we're looking at this market, instead of plus 165, if they actually win, why is that? It's probably because Antetokounmpo has a big game. So when you take Giannis at plus 430 for an MVP, we're actually getting their championship odds. And the same thing can be said about if you like the Lakers to win and you're getting Anthony Davis at a much longer number. Like, this is how I want to correlate the market. So the actual team winning odds, I think there's no value left there. But if we look at the MVP odds, that's where the value can be derived when you basically say, okay, I like the Lakers to win. LeBron's number is fine, but Anthony Davis, if he goes for 35 and 15 in one of these games and pushes them to the championship, I don't think anyone's going to be surprised, especially going up against the Pelicans. And if they take on the Bucks, of course, we're going to see big performances. So might as well just take a shot on the MVP with the player from the team that you like to win.
So if you add up Damian Lillard's implied odds at plus 380 and Giannis Antetokounmpo's at plus 430, that's about 39% implied odds that the Bucks win it all and one of those guys wins MVP. The Bucks implied odds at plus 165 are 38%. So it does actually mesh up pretty well. Do you have a lean between Lillard and Antetokounmpo? Does the threat of Lillard worry you with the Giannis market, or how are you viewing that one?
I would simply just take the longer number between the two of the team. So if I would take Davis simply because he's a little bit longer than LeBron. I would take Antetokounmpo simply just because he's a little bit longer than Lillard. So just keep things as simple as possible. Listen, if Lillard goes for 40 points and hits 6 threes,
right,
it is what it is. But this is just about taking the best number available.
Okay, so Antetokounmpo plus 430 to win MVP right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. That's where Tom seems like he's leaning, but then also some interest in Anthony Davis at plus 750 as opposed to taking the Lakers outright at plus 230. Exactly. LeBron's number is plus 430 right now. Tyrese Haliburton is plus 450. If the Pacers win, it's going to be Haliburton. They're plus 440, so you're taking Haliburton if you think that the Pacers do wind up winning the whole thing. Now, we do have the two semifinals coming up on Thursday. Markets for those games are up right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. The first one is going to be, I love how they're staggering these. The first game starts at 5 Eastern. And then the second one is at 9 Eastern. So you can actually watch it at the end of the workday. Pacers are 4.5-point dogs against the Bucks. And then the second one, Lakers, slim favorites against the Pelicans at minus 1.5. Looking at those two games, Tom, any value for you within those two games specifically?
From the traditional markets as of now, I think it's pretty 254.5 over under is massive. It's one of the higher ones we've seen this year. Both teams are in the top 5 league when it comes to offensive pace. Pacers number 1. They're playing absolutely no defense. They're 16-3 to the over this season, which is why it's so high. However, will we see somewhat of a playoff type environment as we saw with the Celtics and the Pacers? Are we going to see that? So I think there's a chance to take the under and then potentially live bet an over. Hopefully find a bit of a middle if you could. So my initial lean would be under 254 because I just think that's a little bit too high, and then live bet an over. I do have a few angles when it comes to the player props for that first game. There's no player props listed for the second game as of yet. So for Bucks Pacers, Giannis, and again, I already mentioned for the MVP, so it's kind of like the same trend of going under for Giannis. I think he's going to have a big game. His PRA bet, points, rebounds, assists combined, is sitting at 50.5, which is minus 111. And that's obviously massive. Massive number. That's where he should be. That's where Jokic is. That's where Luka is, all these great players. There's obviously a circumstance where he goes 25, 10, and 10.
Right.
Which is something I've discussed before about Jokic. When his triple-double odds, which are back on the initial page for the game lines, his triple-double odds are plus 1,200. Mm-hmm. So, again, if I'm under this assumption that Giannis can win MVP, he can hit a triple-double, why not find the most value where going for 25, 10, and 10 is 45. He hits the triple-double, but doesn't hit the PRA. And again, if I'm assuming the under will be hitting, as I said, it's a lean under 254.5, he may not need to go for 50 points or whatever it might be. So if I'm leaning towards the under, it may be a sloppy game. He's not going to push to 40. I think it's going to be more of a defensive game, more rebounds. So I think Giannis triple-double is actually my favorite bet.
Yeah, that is plus 1,100 right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. And that's the one that's posted right now is Giannis. So those will be posted later on during the day. For the second game for the Pelicans and Lakers, like you said, no props up yet, but any players specifically you think are in a good matchup here, Tom? Any guys you want to check once props are posted for that one?
Yeah, that's going to be Austin Reeves for the Lakers. He's their sixth man. He comes off the bench. Three-point shooter, which we love to see. He's actually taking more three-pointers per game compared to last year. He's shooting them a little bit less effectively. He's a little bit inefficient this year, but his volume is still there. He's still taking 6, 7, 8 three-pointers per game. So the volume's up. The efficiency is down. The Pelicans, they're in the bottom 10 in the league for made three-pointers allowed per game from their opponents. So if he comes off that bench, hopefully facing the second unit for the Pelicans, he can really get those threes going. So it's probably going to be 2.5. There might be a little bit of juice on the over, like minus 140, over 2.5, I think is fine, somewhere around there. So I would say that's probably the best spot to attack. LeBron's odds are probably going to be juiced up. The numbers are going to be juiced. Same thing with Anthony Davis, Zion Williams, and all these players. So I'd probably go for a secondary option where we can find a little bit of value.
Okay, so check out Reeves once those are up for the late game on Thursday, but should be a fun close out to the in-season tournament. Pretty surprised at how well this has gone over. It's been a lot of fun to track it so far. Let's shift focus now and talk about some NHL. Because we have 4 games for tonight, Tom, and 2 of those are nationally televised games. That is on TNT. We got Stars at Panthers and Hurricanes at Oilers. Looking at those 2 games specifically, any traditional market bets you like across those 2 specifically?
Yes, that would be Stars under 6.5 and Canes over 6.5. And there's a little bit of juice on both of those bets. I think it's fine. Stars, Panthers, these are 2 very good defensive teams. And what I like to look at for not just, these games, but I always like to look at the season overall for these teams. And then like the last 2 weeks, how they've been playing, to look at, different sample sizes. Are they trending up or trending down? And the Stars and the Panthers, both teams are solid on defense. They are both in the top 10 league for the fewest shot attempts allowed over the last 2 weeks. So this may not be a high event hockey game, despite having some good offensive players. I think this is going to be trending towards an under, some defense, both very solid goaltenders, Sergei Bobrovsky for the Panthers and Jay Gottinger for the Stars. So it could be a tense game in terms of excitement, just because it probably should be within 1 goal. And that means I'm probably trending towards the under and a low event hockey game.
Yeah, that's for the Stars and Panthers. That total 6.5 minus 130 right now on the under for that one. You mentioned the over for Hurricanes and Oilers. That is over 6.5 minus 130. What leads you towards the over in that game?
Well, both teams over the last 2 weeks, they're in the top 7 of the league when it comes to shot attempts created. So these 2 teams love to push the pace. Obviously, Connor McDavid on one side, Leon Draisaitl, they have a ton of offense. They started off the year horribly. They changed coaches. They're on a 4-game winning streak. And they really are seeming to put things together just a little bit game by game. The Canes, over whether it's this season, last season, however many years in the past, they are consistently number 1 or number 2 in the league when it comes to shot attempts created. They are constantly putting their foot on the gas when it comes to offense. Whether they're up, they're down, it doesn't matter. They're taking over 70 shot attempts per 60 minutes in 5v5 situations, which is unbelievable. So when we have, and granted, the Oilers have been pretty terrible on defense this year, which is why they have struggled out of the gate. So we have these 2, and then obviously the offensive skill of McDavid and Draisaitl and all these players. There's no reasonable assumption or no safe way to take the under just based on the events that these 2 teams can create on offense. So it should be a very wide open game. Like, this is basically the elite matchup that the NHL wants on prime time.
So you're saying I should tune in?
Right.
Okay. All right. That game is at 9:40 Eastern. Over 6.5 again, minus 130 for Hurricanes, Oilers, and then under 6.5 is minus 130 for the Stars and the Panthers. Any player props you like across those 2 games, Tom?
It would be Sebastian Aho for the Carolina Hurricanes. He's their center. Over 2.5 shots. It's only sitting at minus 122, which I think is a pretty reasonable line. He's the top line center for the Canes on the top power play. We look back at his game log, and he is consistently taking 3, 4, 5, 6 shots on goal in some of these games. He leads the team in shots. He's averaging over 3 shots on goal per game. So if I'm expecting the over, and like, as I said, like a high event hockey game back and forth, it correlates with one of their best players, or their best player actually, leading the way on offense. So Aho over 2.5 minus 122, I think, is a superb line for tonight's game. McDavid's line, Draisaitl's line, they're fine. If you just want to take them because you want to have the best player, it is what it is. But I think the value lies with Aho tonight.
That has shortened to -125. That's still okay by you?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So -125 on Aho, over 2.5 shots at FanDuel Sportsbook in that late game between the Hurricanes and the Oilers. There are 2 other games on tap for tonight, though, Tom. So looking at those 2 games, we got the Penguins and the Lightning and the Golden Knights against the Blues. Anything stand out to you, whether it be player props or traditional markets in those 2 games?
It would be from Vegas, 2 from that game. Their money line was at -150 now, -156?
-160.
-160, okay. But if you look at their regulation line, the 3-way money line, I think it was at +100 about 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago. What is it now?
There's some action on the Knights. They're -105 now.
Okay, so that's totally fine. And this is what I always like to look at, like the differential between their money line and their 3-way money line, which I think is pretty substantial. -160 to -105, I think, is a sizable gap. So these 2 teams just played 2 nights ago, 2-1 win in favor of the Blues. Frankly, the Blues are a good team. They're not great. The Golden Knights are a great team. So I'm expecting a bounce back game combined with the argument that I'm making is the value that the 3-way money line brings ahead of the money line. So I wouldn't go to the money line. I think they have to win in regulation. They're a good team that they're going to bounce back. And I think the Blues are overperforming just a little bit this season. So if I'm expecting regression from the Blues, it's Vegas probably getting a little bit of revenge after kind of an ugly loss the other night.
Okay, so that is -105 in the 60-minute money line, the 3-way money line there, -105 for the Golden Knights taking on the Blues. You mentioned there was another one in that game. Which one is that?
It's going to be Mark Stone for Vegas, over 2.5 shots at +140. Just played against the Blues the other night. He had no shots on goal, and this is a player that is routinely taking 2 or 3 shots a night. He's seeing power play time. And again, if I'm expecting Vegas to bounce back, it's going to be because their top players are performing. And like I said, I look at teams, whether it's the entire season or whether it's over a 2-week sample size. And for the entire season, the Blues are allowing 65 shot attempts per 60 minutes in 5v5 situations. And over the last 2 weeks, it's at 64. So they are on pace with allowing a ton of shot attempts, but they're not allowing a ton of goals. So like, as I've talked about last year before, like when we looked at like a funnel, if you allow a lot of shot attempts, that's obviously going to break at a certain point and the goals are going to start to come. So I think the Blues are overperforming and they're allowing way too many shot attempts. That means Vegas is due for like a rise and the Blues are due for a bit of a decline.
So it converged to those 2 markets, finding the best way to exploit that market outside of the 3-way money line at -105. Mark Stone over 2.5 shots, +132 right now at FanDuel Sportsbook.
Okay,
you said
it was +140 when I looked at it just a bit.
So it's a good and bad thing. So it's like, oh, people are on the same things you are on. They're betting them and shortening the odds, but that means we're also getting worse odds. So it's a good thing and a bad thing.
Right. So I would play it down to +125 as the lowest.
So still some value there, but less so than there was before. As always, shop around. Try to identify the best market you can. But +132 for Mark Stone, over 2.5 shots. Tom will play that to +125 for that one. All righty, Tom. That was fun. Getting to talk some NBA, NHL with you once again. We'll get to do more of this once we get out of NFL season, the grind of that. And looking forward to that. Looking forward to hearing your breakdown of Steelers and Patriots later on. Appreciate the time as always. We'll talk to you once again Friday.
Yep. Doing some player props for the NFL on Friday. And of course, I'll be back on Saturday morning for Sunday Night Football, which will be an awesome game.
Yeah, that's Cowboys Eagles. I'm torn about whether that's actually better than Steelers Patriots, but I'll think on it and I'll get back to you by Friday. So when we talk Friday, I'll let you know if I decide which one. Actually, it's after the Thursday game, but I'll let you know later on. That is Tom Vecchio. Check him out on Twitter at Tom_Vecchio1. I am on Twitter at Jim Sonis. You can find me on Threads at Jim.Sonis and on FanDuel Research. You can find FanDuel Research on Twitter at FanDuel Research. Once again, subscribe to the Covering the Spread podcast feed to get the Primetime Tom breakdown of Patriots and Steelers later on today to break down that game. And we're back once again tomorrow with Dr. Ed Fang to break down NFL Week 14 overall. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.